Hello again, YouTube, and welcome back to bizzy.tv. My name is Mike, and today we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday with the customer feedback from our sketches, initial sketches. And I just wanted to take a few minutes, maybe the first 20 minutes or so, and just go back and clean up and revise our sketches so that when we start coding, we know exactly what we're going to do. So I want to jump over to the whoops, just a moment. I need to start up my, I need to make it so you can actually see the whiteboard. But we're going to start with the whiteboard and just clean up some of these sketches. Just a moment, it's loading. So the feedback that we got from the customer was that everything looked pretty good. I mean, I think what we had sketched up was fine, and then she had a couple of things that we were missing. One of the things that was missing was the date on the event, starting date and ending date, and also location. So we're going to want to add that in. Okay, there we go. So we should have it now. And also, for your entertainment, I also have new theme music for the whiteboard. So let me see if I can find that, because you're really going to enjoy that. So getting to the whiteboard, let's get the theme music.
Picture pages, time to get your picture pages, time to get your crayons and your pencils. Picture pages, open up your picture pages, time to watch Bill Cosby do a picture page with you.
All right, so here we've got the whiteboard. And let's take a look at what we had before. So this part was okay. Let's look at the comments that we got from the customer. So she was wondering with regard to the login page, she was a little concerned or apprehensive, I would say, about relying on the fact that users have a Google login. I think that's a safe assumption initially for us, though, that they do have a Google login. We'll see if that becomes an issue further down the road. We'll just keep our eye on it. Here I think she was asking how people would find this page, and I think she was satisfied with our answer when I said that, for example, if the city wanted to advertise or wanted to point to their organization, all they would have to do is link to the this URL right here, and I think she was okay with that. But I think for our own purposes, we may want to add the organization name to this page and make it Google indexed so that if someone is Googling the organization name itself, it might turn up that way. So that's another modification we might want to make. She mentioned on the event page, in addition to reviewing the list of attendees, she may also want to email the attendees of the event. So we have that added in here. And then that's the green here. We asked her if the list of signed up attendees should be private, and it sounds like initially she does want that to be private because there's no way to know. Well, currently we're letting anyone who arrives at the site sign up for the event, so there's kind of a privacy issue if they're not being approved ahead of time. So we're going to keep that private and only viewable by administrators. Here's what I mentioned earlier where we need to add starting and ending time as well as location. The customer mentioned listing a cost, but I proposed that she just puts that in the description area, and she seemed okay with that. She also asked about exporting this to a calendar. I don't think that's something we want to support in the minimum viable product, though, so we'll keep that on the back burner as a future enhancement. Then we talked about, looking now at the roster page, we talked about what would she want to do with this, and we asked about removing or inviting new people. I think inviting people she can do via email, so let's cross that one out for now. But she may want to remove someone from the list. View and edit contact information seemed like something that she would want to do, as well as email the members. And then as well as manual sign up and registration of members, as well as event registrations manually is something that she wants to do. to note who belongs to the organization or who's coming to an event but may not have signed up on their own. So I kind of wanted to clean this up a little bit. So let's just make another page and then just clean up some of these quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So let's just say this is the mock-up. Let me go back to black. This is the mock-up. Whoa, I don't know what I just did. My picture pages are going nuts here. And by the way, I wanted to mention, you could argue that this looks super messy, this SketchUp here. Now, if it were a real customer and not my wife I was showing this to, I probably would clean it up a bit, but not a whole lot, because the whole idea is to iterate quickly, spend the least amount of time on design revisions and getting sign off from the customer. So, you know, I might go back and clean this up some, but I wouldn't, you know, hire a graphic designer to mock this up into something that looked like a real UI. I think that would be a real waste of money right now because we want to move fast. So I would just explain to the customer that, hey, this may look a little messy for now, but it's just to get the idea across and make sure that it's going to solve your challenge. So let's go here to the mockup. We'll call it mockup version 2. And so here I don't really want to so I wish I could see both of these at the same time. I guess it's not going to be possible, but going back to the top, this page looked okay. This page looked okay. That page looked okay. Okay, this one might need a little work. So the organization page just needs the organization name at the top and upcoming events. So to be honest, maybe we can get away with it. We'll just do it here. Let's just put organization. I'm kind of rushing through this because I do want to write some code today. So I think that takes care of that. We'll just erase this part. So now we're looking at the event, and what did she say she wanted to do here? Oh, the ability to email attendees. So let's just add that at the bottom. And we'll just put a box here, a text box, and a send button. Whoops, now I'm erasing everything. That's not good. Okay. All right, and then on the edit event page, this one's going to be tricky to edit right here. So we'll just add in here start, date time, ending date time, and that'll remind us to put that in there. And we also need location here, so we'll put that in. We'll put that down here. And some of these things, we might mock those up a little bit later. Well, let's do that now. In fact, we can just do it underneath. So let's say when they go to a specific member page, so let's call this the member detail page. So I'm going to need a bigger screen here. So let's put the member name at the top. And then we'll put their contact information underneath. And then let's have a remove button to remove them from the organization. I'll tell you what, let's put, trying to keep this simple. Let's put the contact info, but in editable text boxes. So let's say, I'm not going to draw that out, but it'll be name, address, phone number, and email address in text boxes that the administrator can edit. Then we'll have a save button underneath and a remove, or let's say a delete button to remove the member completely. Let's see, does that cover everything we wanted to do here? So that takes care of remove. View contact info takes care of that. Email members, so we'll just say email all members on this page, on the roster page, and we'll have a text box and a send button. So that takes care of that. That takes care of the edit contact information. Then the manual signups. Let's come back to this one because I think we can get rid of this too. That only leaves the manual signups. I think that's safe to add in later, so we'll come back to that rather than delay right now. Okay. Let's draw a line around my screen. All right, so now let's start coding some stuff. So now the excitement really begins. So let's switch back to my screen, and over the weekend I made a separate video about this, but I did install Visual Studio. And whenever I launch into a new project, I also like to think about testing out some new technologies that I haven't used before. So a couple of new things we're going to use today. One of them is called DocumentDB, and this is actually a technology if you want to look up more information about it. This is actually a feature that Microsoft provides with Azure. And it's just called DocumentDB. So there's the web page for it right here. You can search it and read about it. But if you're familiar with databases at all, the traditional way to do a database is something like SQL Server or Microsoft Access, which you might have used. And both of those are table-based, what you call relational data stores. So the data resides in tables or grids, and it looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet. So you would have one record per row of your, if you imagine an Excel spreadsheet, you'd have one record per row. Those kinds of databases are nice because everyone knows how to use them, and you can enforce consistency between records very well and between tables very well. But they do slow down development because you have to constantly be modifying the layout of the data, which is called the schema. And so it takes a little bit longer to get something up and running. DocumentDB is a different type of database where the records are stored in what they call documents. And a document is kind of a self-contained piece of data. In other words, it doesn't have to fit into a table structure. So you can take a big complicated chunk of information, in this case maybe information about a member or about an event, and you can take that whole big chunk of information and push it into DocumentDB as a standalone element, and then pull the whole thing back out later without having to worry too much about how those documents compare to other documents in the database. So because of that flexibility and because it doesn't use a defined schema, we can move a lot quicker. So I'd like to I haven't really used this in a project before, so I'd like to try it out today and see if it works with what we want to do. Another technology that I want to use is called ASP.NET Core. Now, there's a lot of web technologies out there today. Some people are using something called Node.js. Other people are using Python. PHP is certainly an option, but I'm kind of a Microsoft guy traditionally. So I've traditionally used, well, in the olden days, I used ASP. Then I switched to ASP.NET. And then I switched to ASP MVC. And now the newest thing that Microsoft has come out with is called ASP.NET Core, which is pretty much the same as the old ASP.NET stuff, but it's stripped down to run a lot faster and be a lot leaner. So I want to give this a shot. Again, it's something I haven't used, but I've heard a lot about it. So I want to give that a shot as well and see how far we can get. So I've already installed, like I said, over the weekend, I've installed DocumentDB. So that's this blue icon right here. And if we open the Data Explorer, I did run their, over the weekend, if you watch that video, I did run their sample app that they provide. And so it, in fact, I can just show you what the sample app does real quick. So let's load that up. So we'll just run it here. Okay, so the sample app is just a list of to-do items. And so when you click Create New, the document that it's creating consists of 3 pieces of data, just the name, start streaming. We're going to show some neat stuff. And then whether or not the task has been completed. So you just click Create, and when we click Create, it's gonna take this document and store it in DocumentDB. And so here's the document that we just stored, listed from the database. Then we can go in and edit that. We can show details about it. We can delete it. And if we want to mark it completed, we can just go in here and edit the document, mark it completed, and hit Save. And then we'll update that document in the database, and it'll disappear from our list. But if we go into the DocumentDB's Data Explorer right here, we can actually click on the collection, and we can see there's actually 2 documents in there. One is the document we just made. See, here's the information that was stored with the document. So we're going to show some neat stuff. Is complete is true, and start streaming was the name of it. But here's another one that I actually created over the weekend while I was testing. So use whiteboard, play around with the whiteboard, and it's also completed. So you can kind of see how these documents are stored inside the database, and they're self-contained. So we're going to use this DocumentDB as our data backend for the application we're going to make. And in fact, now that we have this open already, I'm going to leave this I'm going to leave the sample app for DocumentDB open in case we want to refer back to, for example, how they've implemented their repository calls. And so I'll just leave that minimized, and I'm going to spin up another Visual Studio. And this is Visual Studio Community 2015, which is free. DocumentDB is also free. So I'm still sitting on the $500 cash that I started the business with last week, and we haven't spent any money yet. So everything so far is free. So let's make a new project here to start our product. And we're going to select a web project. It's going to be an ASP.NET Core web application. And I'm just going to put it in my C projects. Oh, and this is actually something I wanted to do as well today. So we need to call this thing something, and we haven't really talked about a name. So before we launch into that, actually, let's jump over here. And we don't have to come up with the final name today, but we do need a project name or a code name. So I thought it would be fun to go to the code name, random code name generator. Find something that we like. So here's the random code name generator. I'll zoom this up a little bit. Oh, that's a random person name. We don't want that. Code name generator, here we go. Morbid Hammer. Do we like that? Let's try another one. Alarm Furious. Ooh, I like Strong Screwdriver. That has potential. Flannel Freaky. Stony Waterbird. Screaming Scarecrow. Severe Donut. Stormy Subdivision. I kind of like Surreal Tuna. I don't know. Digital Boomerang is nice too. Let's see if Digital Boomerang exists. That sounds like it might be a thing. Yep, that's already a business. And they're on Pinterest. And they're on Glassdoor. All right, that's not going to work. Unique Door. Aimless Wrench. That kind of goes with Strong Screwdriver. Brown Toupee. That's good. Dancing Peasant. Sleepy Dagger. I'm not liking... These are kind of going downhill. I think so far I like Strong Screwdriver the most, but I think there's some other code name generators out there. Okay, so here's another code name. Olive Aluminum Sheepdog. See what else we can get. Teal Lead Poodle. Oh, I see. We have to select what we want here. So, prefix. Let's not use a prefix. Dictionary. Well, these are all... We do need a prefix. Unusual animals. That's going to have to come next, though. The prefixes are all nouns as well. We need an adjective. Let's see about apple. Then a metal, and then let's see. Let's see. Microsoft. Let's see what we get. Are any of these striking you? Just leave a note in the chat window. Let me know if you like any of these code names. Platinum Hydra. Now I kind of like that. Let's see if Platinum Hydra exists. Ooh, there's no Platinum Hydra. Let's go with Platinum Hydra. All right. Okay, so what we'll do is make an empty project here, and we're not going to use authentication, and we're not going to host this on Azure. So we'll just leave those at default. Okay, and I just like to compile it and run it before we start changing things. So let's see how that goes. It's waiting for the restore to complete of all the. It's waiting for all the third-party packages that it needs to compile against here. So what we're going to do in the meantime is we'll set up our source control. So for source control, I typically use Mercurial. So source control is software that lets us keep track of our changes that we've made to our source code. And actually Tortoise is what we're going to use. So let's get Tortoise and we'll install that. This should go really fast. And you'll see that where we created our project folder, there are some files here already. So these are the files we want to add to Mercurial once it runs. Seems like something is locked up here. Well, it's still doing something, but I should have an installer on the screen, I would think, for Mercurial. Let's see. Yeah, Visual Studio is using all of our CPU. Ah, here we go. All right, we'll just keep all the defaults here and install it. And now what we can do here is we'll go to our code directory right here. And what you do to get started with Mercurial is you right click and you say Tortoise HG create repository. So that'll create the repository that's going to hold our source code. And it asks us for some defaults. We'll just say create. Okay, so now we have a repository, but it's blank. We haven't actually committed anything to it yet. This is interesting. Let's try to compile again. Maybe it doesn't like the space that we put in the project name. Maybe it should be Platinum Hydra without a space. So actually, before we continue with the repository, we need to get this working. So let's close this down. So you see all the files that are waiting to be added to our repository, but before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove the code. And I'm going to recreate that project without the space to see if that's better. So we want new project, ASP.NET Core and projects, and we'll just put it without a space this time. Empty. And we'll tell it to compile, and now it's grabbing all those packages again. Okay, and it has all the packages now, so now it's going to compile the blank. Ah, it worked this time. Let's run that and make sure that it launches. It's either going to show nothing or it's going to show an error because there's no... okay, so we have hello world is all we have. So that's fine. So at least it compiled and ran. So we'll stop that. and we no longer need that folder. Now we're in this folder. Yeah, it's probably not happy because we had that folder open in Tortoise HG here, so we'll close that down. Cancel that. There we go. So now let's create that Mercurial repository here. And now we should be able to see all the files that are waiting to be checked in. So let's see here if we actually want all of these checked in. Okay, we do. So it looks like it's not checking in on the binaries, which is good because we don't want those. Well, actually there is a DLL being created here. We don't want to, oh, here's the bins source. Okay. So we want to exclude this bin folder. We don't want that in our source control. So when you're talking about source control, you only want the source files. You don't want the compiled files. So the DLL here is a binary or a compiled file, and we want to exclude that from our source control. So let's edit that hgignore file, and that's going to tell Mercurial what we don't want. So let's open that up, and we'll go to Projects, Platinum Hydra, hgignore. Okay, so I think if we just put /bin, I think it'll ignore that whole directory. Let's see. Yep, so there's the bin, and we also want to ignore this obj folder because those are also compiled. So let's put /obj, and we'll reload. Okay, so now we're just down to a bunch of text files which are defining our project. So I think we're good to go. So we'll just label this initial commit, and then we'll click commit. Whoops, we need to select all of the files, and then we'll click commit, and we need to tell it who we are. And now let's, okay, so now we have our initial commit. Spread these columns a little. So you can see our initial commit added all these files, and I was the one that committed it, and then you can see that our working directory is exactly the same as the previous change set. So each of these are called a change set, and then we'll be able to see from change set to change set, we'll be able to see what exactly we changed. So let's see if we can add one of our screens. Let's add our I'm trying to see what we want to add. Let's just add a login screen to get started. Wow, it really has absolutely nothing in this. Okay, so let's see where's the hello world coming from that it showed us. Is it from the startup? Yeah, here it is. So this is actually a little too empty because it didn't give us any of the model view controller framework that we wanted. So we may have actually spoke too soon on this one because we do want the model view controller. So I think I'm going to blow this away yet again because I want to make sure we get started on the right foot. I'm going to close Mercurial, and I'm going to delete out this folder. I'll just delete the whole thing here. Let's new this again for the third time. We're going to choose ASP.NET our .NET Core web application, Platinum Hydra. And this time, instead of an empty project, we're going to tell it we want a web application. So that'll give us somewhere to start. And again, while that's grabbing the packages, let's open that hgignore file. Let's create our repository. Okay, so our repository, there's our hgignore file. Now let's open that up and put /bin and /obj. And so here are all the files. Let's refresh to make sure we're not getting bins and OBJs in there. And we're not. So there's a lot more. Oh, we also need, let's see, the lib. Yeah, lib is okay. So we have more files here because it added all the MVC stuff for us this time instead of a completely empty project. So that's fine. So we'll just select all those and say initial commit. Let's make sure this compiles and runs before we do that, though. So it compiled. Let's make sure it runs. Okay, so there it is running. This is our actual program. So we can navigate from home to about to contact. Everything seems to be working here. So our website, our basic template website is set up and running. So let's go back to Mercurial and do our initial commit. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Let's jump here and do our initial commit. Make sure everything is current. And we'll commit that, add all those files. Okay, so now we have our initial commit there, and our current directory is unchanged. I wish it would stop collapsing all these columns. Okay. So now if we look at our solution here, our controller, the only controller we have now is the home controller. So okay, so a little bit about controller, model, and view. And let me reformat this using 2 space tabs, which is what I like. There it is. So the controller in an MVC application, which stands for Model View Controller, the controller is sort of the brains of the operation. The controller is responsible for obtaining the data that you want to show and then passing the data off to the view. So the controller here is very simple. Each of these is a method that's getting called that's going to fetch the data. In this case, it's just data that's hard coded into the code. It's going to fetch that and then hand it off to the view right here. Now the view is defined over here in this folder. So here's the home view, and so here is the about page, the contact page, and the index page, or the default page. And the views use something called razor syntax, which we'll get into later. But this is what renders the HTML that you want to display to the user. So let's close that out. So to make a login page, let's go to the controller and let's collapse all these down, and let's make a new action called login, and we'll just return the login view just directly. We're not going to pass any data there. And so we'll go into our views and we'll say create a new view. And we'll just call this login. And we don't need this comment. And we'll just say this is the login page. And now let's tell this that we want to launch on this page. To save us some time, we'll just launch straight to that page. So this is a little different with ASP.NET Core. So let's see. So this is a little different. So I wonder where they want us to, maybe app settings, where do they want us to set our initial page? So here's where I learned some stuff too, because this is different. It used to be in properties for the project, but apparently it's not there now. I don't think it's going to be in web config. Could it be here in startup? Let's see here. Let's do some searching for an answer. ASP.NET Core default page. Default page. Let's see what that. And actually, I'm going to change this to start page. Let's see what that. See, this is from 2013, so I don't think this answer is going to be relevant to what we're doing. So let's get rid of that one. So this is specifically talking about ASP.NET Core. I don't see it there either. I'll have to research this one later. So for now, we'll just forget about it and we'll launch the default URL that we were using before. But the idea here is we want to test this the new login action. So let's compile that. And it looks like we need to stop and restart this. Okay, so now if we go to home/login, this is the login page. So that's what we told it to display. Now I don't want actually this stuff around here. And this is being added by the view start call, which is setting the layout that the page is using and the view is using. And we actually don't want the view to use any layout, so we're just going to get rid of this. We'll just take it out, and we don't want this layout here. We can't delete it while we're debugging. But with this change, we should get rid of that layout. Let's see, view imports, that's fine, we'll leave that there. And we have an error page here. And here's the layout that we don't want to use. And then we have some views that we're not going to use either. But let's just refresh and see if that got rid of the layout here. Let's just save everything. There. So now we have the login page without the layout around it, which is what we want. Actually, what we could do, maybe I spoke too soon. Let's go back here and put that layout back. And then, well, let's just change the layout. So we're going to leave all the HTML standard stuff. And we'll just take out all of this stuff. We'll leave the render body so that we'll get our view rendered for us. And looks like there's a bunch of JavaScript in here as well. And again, let's format this for the right tabs. All right, so let's see. That should give us, this is the login page, and it looks like it has still has some CSS or some styling going on. Yeah, it's right here, CSS site and Bootstrap. And that's coming from, I believe, up here. So here's our site CSS. Yeah, so it has some padding in here. Okay, we actually don't want any of this styling. Let's take that out and refresh this again. Okay, so now we're back to a pretty standard page, although it looks like something is setting the font for us because that's not the default font. That's probably Bootstrap doing that. Let's see. So here's Bootstrap. And Bootstrap, by the way, is the template that I was mentioning in earlier broadcasts. So there's a template that'll let us get a pretty nice looking website without a lot of work. So let's look at the Bootstrap style sheet. It's in lib bootstrap dist CSS and Bootstrap. Let's see. It's this one right here. So let's take a look at that. And see here it's setting the font family to sans serif, which is why we're getting that font change from the default. That's okay. We'll leave it like that. And then Bootstrap is setting a whole bunch of other stuff here. So we'll leave all that alone because we're going to use it eventually. Okay, so we have the beginnings of our Google page. Now let's go to our login page and say, click here to log in with Google. So if we test that, we should see it say that here. Okay, and now we need to start researching. So this is when our first research begins. How do we enable a web page to log in with Google? So what I like to do here is keep a list of what we did today and then what we plan to do tomorrow so we can kind of keep up with it. We wound up not doing much of a mock-up. I'm just going to delete that page. I'm going to make a new page of notes for today from 12.6 and what we did today. So we revisited some of the customer comments, or we revisited the customer comments, and we set up our code environment and tools. We initialized our source code control system, which is Mercurial. And we started our login page. What we'll do tomorrow, we'll set up our, we'll start researching how to log in via Google. There should be plenty of information out there. And then we will start connecting our web app to the database, which is DocumentDB. Because we're going to need to do that very soon because we need to store information about our organization in there. We need to store information about our membership in there and eventually the events in there. So we need to get started on that sooner than later because we're going to need it pretty quick. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. I appreciate you guys checking in, and we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.